This is Judge Joe Brown, and we're listening to We All Be News. News-free Dixie for the 21st century.
Okay, now what are we starting off with?
Let's talk about, I guess, your background, a little bit about your growing up in Kansas and about the type of people you come from, your parents and stuff.
Okay.
And I guess we leeway into like how you got, football and all this other stuff, because it's interesting to be like, you really unsung. I remember when Muhammad Ali died, and they showed that famous conference. Yeah. And you right up behind, humble as could be.
That's right.
You standing with them guys. I saw you. I said, that's Marco's dad. I know that. Yeah, he's still a black don't crack. You know what I'm saying? Like, you standing up with that guy. You might not always agree with everything somebody said, but for you being that very important summit at press conference.
It was very, very important, man. Muhammad Ali was very, very important because he showed us, man, that you can go all the way to the top. You know? And also his transition was a reflection of what life is about. You can go all the way to the top, but you're still in the hands of the Lord.
Nah, so you actually was cool with his stance on like Vietnam and some other things.
Not really, but I acknowledge that he had an opinion about things, and I acknowledge also that he did not allow himself to be fully informed from a knowledge and an educational standpoint of view, to really read more than what he heard and what he saw, to influence himself,
What about his religious, like the fact that he was a Muslim and practiced Islam, or he was not a Christian, like did that?
Well, I think the thing about it, I acknowledge the fact that at least he had some basic reach for religion itself. And in doing that, a lot of times you really find the truth. And because I had seen other people that had reached for Islam and eventually realized that there were other choices and dealt with Christ and God and began to make a transition, but at least they were climbing the tree.
Right.
Yeah, they weren't picking the right fruit, but the mere fact that they were climbing the tree was important because they realized that there was a right and a wrong, and whatever religion it was, whether that was Islam or whether that was Christianity, there was a glove that they were putting on that was trying to separate themselves from bad and good,
Cool. So do you remember how you met Muhammad Ali? Like, who introduced you, or what was the place? Or
I think I met Muhammad Ali personally when I was with the Dallas Texans when I was playing professional football, and he came down, and I think he had an exhibition bout there in Dallas, because I was with the Dallas Texans. We were going head to head with the Cowboys in the NFL and the American Football League, and I was with Lamar Hunt down there, and I got a chance to meet him and really spend some time and get a chance to really talk to him. And I really got a feel of his philosophy and his view and his approach. Of course, I always talk to him about Christ and he always talking about Islam, and so it was always a situation where he was on to influence me, or I was going to influence him, and then after a certain period of time, we say, okay, we both have our own opinion. But the thing about Muhammad is that he had a focus. He had the ability to focus on something and stay on that trail and make that a good trail to be on for himself. And it may not have been the best trail for everybody, and everybody may not have agreed with him. But the thing about it, what he did and what he encoded all the way into the ring, and whatever he did was a matter of achievement. He knew how to take things to a certain point and bring it to closure at a pinnacle level. Because he challenged and achieved other people that had similar opinions, but he was able to interact with them to the point that he would hear them and they would hear him. But he would probably leave with his opinion and they would leave with their opinion, but it had been heard.
So you would say that he was an intellectual?
I don't know if I would always say, I don't know if I could come to the point to say Muhammad Ali was an intellectual. I would come to the point that I would say that Muhammad Ali was a factual assessor of what he saw and how he judged it, and he had the ability to communicate it. And I think that would be the way I would state Muhammad Ali. And not only could he communicate it, but also he had the ability in his boxing, etc., and things like that, to actualize it. He would make a statement and actualize it in the ring.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? So therefore, I mean, he was a man that had basic ability to assemble and pull it together, and also take it in his mind and in his heart and actualize it. Now, whether or not that actualization was something you believe or I believe in, but it was something he believed in and executed it.
So y'all like kindred spirits, right? Would you say you like that? Like you was able to visualize something and actually manifest it? Is that what you did with your whole life? I mean, I'm looking at, where we at right now and the things you have done with your life. You have that same ability. Is that important for athletes to have in general?
I think part of that is what you're saying is true, but I also was very blessed in regards to having a mother and a father, and to watch my dad. We transcended all the way from Florida, from Texas to Oklahoma to Kansas, and part of seeing him make that transition was to get away from segregation and slavery and the Klan and that type of thing, and his vision of being in Kansas, which is basically a free state, and it all was I was able to see him through that transition all the way coming to Kansas and becoming into politics and becoming a legislator, state legislator, and things like that. But my dad also had the opportunity, and he engaged Langston University, and he was educated. He was a good reader, and that was one thing he always tried to encourage me to do, because I would prefer to be out playing football or basketball or something. But at least I was able to follow his ambitions all the way to get my PhD also.
So education was the number one priority in the household.
Oh, that was number one priority. I mean, if you focused on that track, other things would come to you. But if you focused on another track, you could be on that track, but other things might not come to you. So and I followed that. I mean, I went all the way and got my master's and my PhD and things like that. And it wasn't that I was a great student, but it was the fact that it was a track to stay on, and it was a track that I could stay on and eventually get to the end. It wasn't easy.
Right.
But in doing that, you learn the art of affiliation. You learn the art of interacting with other people. And it might be something you missed, but it might be something somebody would share with you. Oh, by the way, did you know such and such and such?
Mm-hmm.
And that was, to me, one thing that really helped me throughout life is the art of affiliation. It didn't mean that everybody's your friend, but it means that you can interact with them and they can interact with you, and you could share how to get from this point to that point. If they were going one way and you were going another, the important thing is let it happen.
Like, who pushed athleticism or athletics in the household? I mean, I know education. Where did they come from?
Well, I think that's a very good question. In athletics, probably, being born in Muskogee, Oklahoma, and my dad going to Langston University, I became aware of sports by Langston University. Langston playing Wiley in football. And there was a guy by the name, had my first name by a guy by the name of Curtis Clay. And he was a running back. And that was something that I always say, Daddy, I want to play football. Because the historical black colleges was a basket of awareness of what a black person could do. Not only could you go to school, but you also could be the president of the university. You also could be the professor of history. You could be the professor of commerce. All those things are possible. And then the other thing about segregation is that it reflected what you could do with an education or without an education. There were black banks, and there were black doctors and black nurses, and even black hospitals. The segregation forced us to realize that we could take care of ourselves and we could learn the skills and knowledge that we had to have to accomplish that. And we didn't have to depend on anybody else. Now, we had to depend on the political aspect of the sanctions or the ability to do it. They would always put a limit where you could only have so many doctors here, or you go if you go be a doctor, you got to go to Howard University, you got to go to black colleges, all that stuff until we had integration. But the important thing, whatever opportunity we had to climb a mountain, we would climb it. It might not have been the one we wanted, but we would climb on it. The first time when they look across, they would see us looking at them.
So segregation, in a way, was a good thing for black people. Would you say that?
Well, I don't know if I would say it was a good thing. I would say it offered the opportunity of parity, meaning you could see what the white man could do, and you could achieve his level or exceed his level without being with him and not being in his presence to accomplish it. But the goal is that you could climb that mountain too.
So your father, I think, is an interesting person to me. So he was an entrepreneur, he was about education, and he was a politician, and he was also pivotal in the Brown v. Board decision in some type of way. Is that true?
Right. Yeah. Everything you said is true. I don't know if I can go into the details, but I think the important thing that I got from my father is that he was an entrepreneur. And being an entrepreneur meaning that he would take an idea and a concept and also an observation of the market and what was needed in the marketplace and bring it to the place. But also he took advantage of the issue of segregation because at that time, as we were coming up from Texas to Oklahoma, blacks could only go and do so much. They'll be willing to take their money. I mean, you could go in, sometimes you could go in at certain times and shop and, blah, blah, blah. But then when there was an opportunity to have a black-owned business, a black cafe, a black restaurant, or something like that, it was yours. So if it's yours, let's support it, that type of thing, But a lot of that came from the fact, like I said, he went to Langston University and he got the skills and the ability to know what it took to do that, Education was very important to him.
What was your father's name?
Curtis McClInton Senior.
Did you have any siblings or have siblings?
You mean
brothers and sisters?
Brothers and sisters.
Uh-huh.
I had a sister by the name of Ann. Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. Like, what about your mom? Was she's a very educated woman as well too?
Well, my mother did. She went to Friends, and she went ahead, and as a matter of fact, she went ahead and got her PhD. She went to Friends University there in Wichita. Yeah.
And what was your mom's name?
Mary Ella McClInton.
That's a very high standard your parents have for that. But did your sister Ann, did she get her PhD too, or did she go into education like you all, advanced degrees?
Oh, Ann got married and she had children. But she did. I think she did finish college, but she was more of a family person within a family. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So it's like y'all well balanced. I mean, very productive people come out this strong household with strong values and stuff like that.
Well, I think we were reflected between church and between the values of the household that we could achieve if we set our minds upon a goal and reflected on that goal. We could achieve it, and in doing that, would always have a book or something to read, whether it was George Washington Carver or whomever it might be, that it could be done. You could be a slave, and we weren't slaves.
Right.
You see, but if Carver could do it, why couldn't we? That type of thing.
Wow.
Yeah, and also the transition of why we came from Florida to Texas, and from Texas to Colorado to Kansas. Why we made that transition? Because we wanted to be free. And if freedom is available or education is available, you must obtain it. You must pursue it. And I think that was the one thing that really impressed me, is that you have to engage your desires. You have to engage your desires.
Powerful message right there.
Yeah.
And so you went to Langston, you followed your father's footsteps, or where did you go to school?
Oh, well, I went to Langston when he was there, and I became aware at Langston because of I enjoyed watching the football. That's when I became really interested in football. But I knew, but see, we moved from Oklahoma, and then we moved to Emporia, Kansas, and Lawrence, and that area. And then when we got to Wichita, because my dad followed the Negro Airmen, but I realized all the time that education was very, very important. And I think the one thing that I really got interested in education was the Howard marching band and the Howard football team, Howard and Langston, and playing football, et cetera, et cetera. And that was something that attracted me to the colleges. I mean, both the bands and the dancers and all that. But as I got closer to it, I realized in order to do that, I had to learn how to read and write. And I see, I was left-handed, man, and when I was young, I would start writing from the all the way to the left side of the page from the right side of the page to the left side of the page, and I had to change that all the way around. So it was a process. It was a process. Yeah.
Wow. So you still left-handed? You still right-left-handed?
Oh yeah, I'm left-handed.
Yeah, I'm left-handed too. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm left-handed all the way.
That's fascinating. So that's very unique.
And it helped me in football because I was a pretty good left-handed pantser, but also it was it made it difficult on a lot of the teams we played against. So say they have their best defensive backs on the right because most of the quarterbacks and the players are right-handed, and they didn't have their strongest people on the left side when you run left to them. Yeah.
So when you say that football helped you in the game of life as well too, like you just talked about how you turned a disadvantage to advantage being left-handed, how it actually helped you in football. So did football teach you how to deal with life?
Well, football taught me a very important aspect of life, and that was a sense of order and discipline and setting goals and achievement. And the other thing about achievement is that it isn't always given to you. You have to compete for it. And if you have to compete for it, then you have to be better at the person you're competing against. And in order to be better than the person you're competing against, you have to evaluate that person and you also have to develop your skills to defeat that person, or you learn to flee. There's some people that you just can't beat, and sometimes you don't want to engage them. But I mean, if it is something that is reasonable and logical, and you learn that in school sometime. I mean, I wasn't good in chemistry, but I was good in management, and I was good in history. So you learn, to pick your battles, And at the end of the day, you march with the guy that is majored in chemistry or majored in philosophy for everything, and you might major in management and business, but you still walk on the stage. You still got the degree, right. But you have to put the glove that fits your hand. You know what I mean?
I hear that. Yeah. I also want to ask you how you got involved in your accomplished opera singer. You could sing. You could sing. You got to sing pretty well. Where did it come from?
Well, I tell you, that's very important that you ask that. I became interested in music because of Paul Robeson. And I got a book, and I had my dad gave me a book on Paul Robeson. And I think the important thing about it, I realized that not only was Paul Robeson a singer, but he was a Phi Beta Kappa, summa cum laude, and he really was a person that was educated in the top of his class. And what that taught me is that you don't have to define yourself as one thing. You can put a glove on your finger, and it can fit all 5 fingers. But the important thing about it, you have to put the glove on. And if you put the glove on, you have to study how to get it done, and it takes time. And I kind of learned that is that you just take time and do it. Some people do it faster than others, and some or slower than others.
Right.
But even the person that's fast or the people that's slow, they don't always finish. The important thing, you got to learn to finish.
Learn to finish. Wow, that's powerful. So, did you ever get a chance to meet Paul Robeson?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, that's a question that you've asked me, and I just can't say if I did or not. I think I did, and again, I don't think I did. I don't know.
But I find you met his spirit, though. You know his spirit.
Yeah, I know his spirit.
So you got the spiritual.
But and when you asked me if I met him, I think I did attend a couple of his concerts. I mean, because I was the type of person that I'd get on a bus and go to a concert and things like that, And but as I reflect back on it, I don't think I think I did attend some of his concerts. Yeah.
But you had your own concerts, right? You did. I know you cut some CDs, which is
yeah. Because he was my idol. I mean, I wanted to. I knew that a black man could do what Paul Robeson did. I mean, that was football, and I ran track, and then also he was a singer. And that was something that was a glove that I knew I could put on. My hand would fit that glove because I had those similar talents. I mean, it may have not been a perfect fit.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it was something I know that a black man could achieve, and I wanted to achieve it. But the most important thing about Paul Robeson, it wasn't his athletic ability, and it wasn't always his singing. It was the fact that he was an academician. I mean, he was a scholar. He was a scholar.
Definitely. He speak a whole bunch of different languages, right? How many languages did he speak?
I don't know about that.
A lot of them, right?
I would ask. I think it was a 3, if I remember. I know it was something about. I know it was Spanish, English, and I don't know if the other one was German, but I knew he had about three languages. Yeah, well, furthermore, I mean, I think the important thing about it, he was just a scholar. And if it was something that he had an interest in and focused on, he could engage it and he could bring it to closure in regards to a glove of knowledge.
Yeah, I was speaking of something. You know so many, like, I guess, inspired by impressive people, but also had the chance to work with impressive people. And one person I was thinking about when you said all these things, I think about Jim Brown.
Right.
And I want to know what your thoughts about your friend Jim Brown. How did y'all meet?
Well, I think really I pursued Jim because Jim had the concept and idea of the Black Economic Union, and I think it was a matter of his philosophy and his basic image. He was somebody that I pursued. I wanted to sit down and talk to him, and as a matter of fact, to the point when he had the Black Economic Union, I went to him and talked to him, and I ended up being the first president of the National Black Economic Union. He told me, if you want to take the idea and do something with it, do it. And we were able to do that and began to really pull a lot of the black athletes together because, you know, we had the whole issue during the time with Martin Luther King, you know, in this country of segregation. And although we played football, we still were black, and we still had to maintain our ability to balance out our desires and our wishes and goals and objectives without breaking the egg. We wanted to carry the egg with us because at some point in time we wanted to crack it and eat it in a full plate, and that happened.
That's excellent. Wow. So I mean, like, it's like it was an interesting time for athletes, professional black athletes, to be activists. And I know a lot of people complain now that a lot of these, you know, well-paid, high-profile athletes are not as activist-minded or community-minded like you were, like you all were like 50 or 40 something years ago. How do you feel about the athletes of today? You think they really are part of that tradition of being community-minded activists, or what are your thoughts about athletes of today?
Well, first of all, I think the important thing of what you're saying is today. And today is not what it was yesterday.
Right.
Today really is more of a focus of the individual. And the individual must take his or her talents and achieve it to the highest level, because we have had a black president. We have had blacks on the Supreme Court. We have achieved at high levels. There's nothing we cannot do in this country. The country's laws or segregation, none of that exists. The important thing is, what are my abilities, who am I, and what do I want to achieve? And after I achieve it, who can I basically influence and make things better in the community where I basically live? And can I be a good listener and observer of what needs to be done? You know?
So what do you tell, like, I guess young people then, young black people, about the things that's going on right now, as we see Black Lives Matter, police brutality, other things that are happening? What will be your message to the young black people today?
Well, my message is to focus, and to focus on those things that you observe and you see that will allow black people in this country to succeed, whether or not it's Obama or whether or not it's whomever it may be. Success is obtainable, and it is obtainable through an art of discipline, an order, and education and knowledge, and your balance against what's going on in the community, et cetera, is find a book in the library.
Actually, this too, I'm interested in how do you get involved with the American Football League over the NFL? How did that happen?
Money.
Okay.
There was a guy by the name of Lamar Hunt, and he happened to be one of the wealthiest individuals in this country, and his family was wealthy, oil and gas, etc. And it was a beautiful time of opportunity. The NFL competing against the American Football League, and it just boiled down to money. And furthermore, it didn't bother me because Texas, I was born in Oklahoma, and we lived in Texas for a while. And the first football game I saw was WhITe and Langston University. So So it worked out fine for me, man. It was like putting a glove on, you know. And as a matter of fact, when I played with the Dallas Texans, that was great for me because that's where I saw the first football game between Langston and Wiley, man.
Wow. Well, somebody's like Lamar Hunt is still like he's an interesting character because he was one of the first people to take an interest in the HBCU football players. He actually started it, I guess, drafting players from the HBCU schools.
And when you say HB, historical black colleges,
yes, okay. Historical black colleges.
Well, two things. Yes, that's what you're saying is factual, but the other aspect of it is that's where the talent was, and that's where the talent was sitting on the shelf, because of the National Football League was not exploring all the talent that was basically available to them. They wanted to keep that glove as white as it could be. Every now and then they'd put a black spot on it. You see what I'm saying? But when you really reflect on it and you see guys like Paul Robeson and you see a Phi Beta Kappa, a summa cum laude, and a guy, you know, that can play the game. And at that high level, you realize that there got to be more talent like that. I mean, if it came off of that tree, it's got to be on another one.
Right, exactly.
And that's the way it happened. But you had a guy like Lamar Hunt. All he wanted to do is be like the other white boys, and he wanted to open up a team in Texas. But because it was segregated down there, he said, well, the National Football League went over. He said, fine, I'll open up my own league. And man, that was the best thing that happened to us because it ran up the price tag of good players, and it made it competitive, and eventually we evolved and had two leagues, American Football League and the National Football League. And then you had the Super Bowl, and that was just a great climax, man, a great climax.
You're so humble. You actually played in the first Super Bowl.
Yes, I did.
And not only that, you scored the first touchdown for American Football League.
That's true.
That's impressive. Like, can you describe the first Super Bowl for us? Like, how did it feel to be a part? Did you know how big it was at that time?
Well, no doubt about it. I realized it was very big, and I was very excited. And it was really the blossoming of the flower of the American Football League, and the blossoming of flower of black players, and it was a blossoming of the flower of our country because it was an assimilation that all things that had not been allowed to come together could come together, and the end result is one of the biggest and most entertaining and financial events that happened in this country in sports, and that was the Super Bowl.
Wow. So like who y'all had at the halftime? Was it Howard or was it Florida A&M for the halftime show? Was like
I think it was Florida A&M and Texas A&M, one of the two. I think
I was thinking about this one was like Super Bowl.
I don't know. It could have been Florida A&M and Howard. I think it could have been But the reason I say that because both of those black colleges had great bands, and Florida A&M and Howard University, they had great bands, and of course there was some very nice cheerleaders on them too.
that helps. That definitely does help. All right, like you actually I'm just thinking about now. Super Bowl weekend is like a holiday. It's really a national holiday. Like Super Bowl Sunday is really like an unofficial holiday for the country. I mean, I feel that way anyway. Everybody, even not into football.
Well, that's correct. And I'll put your glove on and I'll put my glove on. But as a player, I mean, it was the most pinnacle game that ever be played in the history of our lives. Number one, be in a Super Bowl, and number two, to be challenged to win it.
Wow.
Yeah. But now, from the standpoint of the audience and the fans, it was the greatest thing to be able to have and be in that game, to see that basic appreciation of a game of football that we played and loved.
So how did it feel to score that touchdown in the Super Bowl? I mean, for you, how did that moment feel?
That was what I went there for.
The first touchdown out of many on it for the American Football Conference now.
Well, I realize that, but I mean, the thing is, as you bring it to my attention now, I guess my basic reflection is that that's what I was there to do. That's what I was supposed to do, and I executed it. I felt good about it, It wasn't a matter of it was a Super Bowl, but it was a matter that as a ball player, this was a door that I needed to knock down, and that's what I did.
So how was it playing for, I mean, I guess progressive white people like, I guess, Coach Stram and Lamar Hunt? They said it was open-minded, progressive people. How was it to play for Coach Stram?
Wonderful. First of all, he was an educator. First of all, he probably learned more about the game than we did. And the reason I say that because Coach Stram wasn't a complete coach and had a lot of full-plated experience and talent when he came into the American Football League. I think he was an assistant coach. But I mean, it was a situation, not only was it an opportunity for more black players to get into professional football because of the NFL was kind of tight and that type of thing, but it was also an opportunity for young, talented white coaches, to move up and do that. Because Hank Stram really was an assistant coach. I mean, he didn't have a long career of coaching, if I reflected on it. But he was bright and intelligent, and also he was kind of a hand in glove of Lamar in regards to what he wanted to pull together.
And about Lamar Hunt, I think it's fascinating. What are your thoughts about him as a person?
Absolutely superior. And the reason I say that is because he had an idea. He wanted to assimilate that idea. He tried to sell that idea on the open market, and he couldn't do it in regards to integrating the leagues. So he said, okay, if I can't do it and you won't give me a team in these cities that I want, in Texas and places like that, I'll start my own football league. And that was the greatest thing that happened, man, in sports, because it was a competition that led up to the Super Bowl, the greatest sport event, that happened in the history of the world, man.
Right, he had about 50 Super Bowls.
Yes.
He played the first one.
That's right, very first one.
So it's amazing to see how it's grown. You always knew it was going to be this big mega success. Did you think it was going to be this big mega success as it is now?
Well, yeah, I know it was going to be a success. I'm not altogether sure I knew how big it was, but to me, it was as big then as it is now because it brought the NFL and the American Football League together, and above all, it recognized our league. It recognized Lamar Hunt and his idea and his vision. And also it brought more black players into the game of professional football.
So what about it? You won Super Bowl III. Kansas City won. Was Super Bowl III y'all won?
Yeah.
How was it to win a Super Bowl?
Fantastic. Fantastic.
You go to Disney World?
Absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic, yeah. But the one thing about that, I would have to say, it was an assimilation of a group of players that were used to being winners, and we were able to take it from high school to college into a league called the American Football League that was supposed to be inferior to the National Football League, and bring the concept that we are winners. And we took it that way and executed it that way. And it was a glove that was a perfect fit for us because we had to put it on and it made it fit.
Wow, that's incredible. You guys are pretty talented teammates as well. I mean, y'all was a very great, a strong collective of talent and also a team.
Well, I think what you just denoted there, the teammates, an effective team, was the brilliance of Coach Stram and Lamar Hunt in regards to taking what resources they had, which was money, but also the talent to assess individual players that were not Caucasian in most instances, and bring them together because they had been blunted and not assimilated in the National Football League at the time, and say, we can take this talent, cultivate this talent, and become world champions. And that's exactly what he did. And not only did he do it, but he put his whole family and his whole family's wealth at risk to do it.
So it was about winning.
It was about winning because the National Football League did not want the American Football League to succeed. And they did everything they could blunt it. And of course, the other thing about it, many of the markets that the National Football League was not in because of being in the South, like Florida and Texas. Hey man, that's where the fans are. I mean, you talk about Texas A&M and Florida State and all that. You talking about just the black fans alone in those schools, man, could fill up a stadium every time you played, and that was a market, both from the standpoint of on the field, and also from the standpoint of entertainment. Florida A&M and the marching band and all that kind of stuff. Hey man, it was just a part of our culture and our society that had to be allowed to pull the curtain back where it could be seen, and that's what the American Football League did because Lamar brought all that talent in with the black ball players. You know.
I'm gonna ask you this. I think it's interesting. I'm thinking about Dallas, Texas became the Kansas City Chiefs, correct?
Correct.
And like, what is about Kansas City? 'Cause I'm thinking about the Kansas City Monarchs with J.L. Wilkinson, who brought Jackie Robinson along, actually helped initiate integration to Major League Baseball. Is there anything to do with the atmosphere of Kansas City that contribute to that type of progressiveness when it comes to sports and integration?
Well, I would like to say that the history of Kansas being a free state, and the other aspect that there were athletes that had come out of Kansas that have been successful, especially black athletes, and myself being one of them, and whether or not it was others that were in the same glove that you could basically put on. And the other fact of going head to head every weekend with the Dallas Cowboys and the Dallas Texans, it got to be an extremely difficult burden. And the burden was really put on Lamar because he really was there first, and then the Cowboys came in to blunt him with the NFL, you see what I'm saying? But coming to Kansas City, originally they took a look at St. Louis, and St. Louis was still too segregated, at the time. And they came to Kansas City, and it was more of a open market in that particular area. Yeah.
Just 4 hours away on 70. Right?
That's right.
Well,
that's right.
4 hours, man.
Right.
Wow. I actually also was well about being an activist. You already been doing the activism, Jim Brown, the Black Economic Organization he had. But your involvement in politics, in national politics, how did that happen?
Well, my involvement in national politics was really hand in glove from my father. My dad was one of the first black elected state senators in the state of Kansas, and he was a Democrat. And he got involved in civil rights and civil rights legislation. Of course, we moved all the way up from Florida to Texas, and from Texas to Colorado to Kansas. And part of that was to get away from, the segregation in the Klan and all that. But that was all part of my dad's vision of freedom. Of course, he got involved in politics as the first black state senator in the state of Kansas. And so I think the thing about it was all part of being everything that we were capable of being as a human being, whether or not we were black or white, is that coming to Kansas, allowed that to happen for me as an individual, as my dad's son, what you wanted me to be. And I did it both in sports and academic, got my PhD from the University of Kansas. And I think the important thing about it is that was what the purpose was all about, to be everything you can be. And I was able to finish up college and go. And because I was a Republican, because I believed that Abraham Lincoln gave up his life that we could have our freedom. And I was with Condoleezza Rice and Colin Powell in Washington, D.C., in that particular time, Yeah.
That's cool. So you actually worked for Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush.
That's right.
And then how was it working for those guys?
Good. It was, there were goals and objectives, and, they were boss man.
So you made your mark in like all like different facets of human activity, which is pretty impressive. I mean, when you was, I guess, in Kansas growing up, did you imagine yourself living out this type of life, this amazing life?
No, I think the important thing that in closing out, I'd like to say is that I was reared up in a family with my dad and my grandfather and my uncle being businessmen. And we were always taught that you had a talent or a service to provide a person to meet their goals and objectives. And that was something that was a part of me. It was just a part of me. If you're going to play the game, you got to play it to win. If you're going to sell a product, you got to make sure it's a product that people will buy. And that's how you succeed. And somewhere along the line, people change their basic objectives or interests, and you have to make that adjustment with them, because otherwise they'll go elsewhere. But if you can adjust it and say, oh, I heard that you like this. Oh, well, here it's available, as long as it's legal.
So who's the most interesting person you met in your life?
Most interesting person I met in my life? Oh, that is a very, very, very good question. And I'll have to look you right in the eye and tell you, Senator Curtis R. McClInton Sr., my dad.
Wow. That's a great answer.
And the reason I say that is not because he was my dad, but because he allowed me to have a clear vision of who he was and what made him what he was. And from a very early age, I started watching games played with Langston and Wiley, and seeing those pretty cheerleaders, and seeing those big bands, and seeing those football players. And I realized that in order to do all of that and have that in my life, I had to go to college.
Wow. So education is the key. So knock at that door, the life you want. That's excellent. Wow.
That's right. And in order to go to college, you had to be able to achieve and to stay there. And that was something that, you take into life. You just have to continue to meet a certain level of achievement and accomplishment. And the other thing that I think I learned was that the art of affiliation, because you don't know everything, but if you affiliate with people, you will be informed and aware of what the next steps are that you didn't realize were there, because they shared it with you.
Excellent. And I guess let's wrapping it up. What advice would you give to anybody about this life thing? What would be your advice on how to live it well?
Well, I think probably I would reflect to you the most comforting achievement that I ever made for myself was to learn to read and write, and learn to be able to take a book and go in a corner and read it and assimilate what was basically being written, whether or not it was about George Washington Carver or Paul Robeson, to realize how these individuals achieved themselves in life with all the basic burdens and problems and the time of society that they were able to do it. And I think reading is very important, but the also important thing with reading is the ability to write what you read in your own basic flow of life and encode it and express it.
That's excellent. I can tell you're a voracious reader. I want to know, have you written any books?
I think we wrote something at one time, but it's been so long ago, I don't know what it was. But when I was working on my PhD, as one thing I began to realize that I enjoyed doing, and that was writing. And of course, reading about Paul Robeson and Carver and people like that, you realize that the art of reading and writing and expressing and assimilating what you saw and what you saw other people do and achieve and accomplish, and to put it on print was very, very important. And I think out of that, I found the point of speaking and articulation a lot easier than writing. But I eventually learned that I could do that better on a computer and a typewriter than I could with a pen.
Wow, I feel on that. I'm left-handed too. I feel on it right. I can't write no more. That's excellent. So, do you have any other thoughts you want to share, or anything on your mind?
Well, I think the only reflection I'd like to say is that the one thing that I appreciate about my journey in life is that I had the opportunity to see the transition in this country from segregation to integration, to civil rights, from the transition to a black president. And also, I was very privileged to know and acknowledge that I came from a very good family, my mother and my father and my grandfather. And they were a part of that transition. They moved from the South, from Florida to Texas to Colorado to Kansas, because the pursuit of freedom was important to them. And my dad was a state senator, and he continued to fight for civil rights, and he helped do civil rights legislation in Kansas, etc. And the other important thing was the fact that you must educate yourself, and I was able to take that influence and go ahead and finish college and get my PhD, etc.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
You know, I was thinking when you saying all that, I was thinking about your grandson, and I was thinking, man, he got like y'all raised the bar so high. For him, and y'all really set that bar, including your daughter, his mom.
Yeah.
Y'all set it so high.
Yeah.
And so what is your advice to your grandson there? I mean, what do you tell him? I mean, cause all this history is coming behind.
Well, the thing about it is that you're at a point in time where you can really observe and really realize that it can be achieved and it can be done. And at that point in time when it was done, it was a little bit more difficult than it is now. And we have it all laid out for you. Number one, you know you could do it. Number two, back then we knew it could be done. We knew that there was a George Washington Carver and you know that those type of things. But now you're in the family and it's all part of what can happen under this roof.
Well, thank you so much, Brother Curtis. In the words of Greg McClINton, we love you madly. Keep on producing and pushing.
We'll keep on doing what you're doing. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.